Hey, welcome to the Varsity Voices and one of your favorite episodes, I know, which is the Prognosticus episode, Dan. How much better am I getting at saying that from week to week?
It's like you say it all the time, every day, several times a day.
Every day.
We're locking it down.
I'm thinking about it constantly. Yeah, make sure I practice saying it every hour, leading up to our podcast. So
it could be like one of those. It's like one of those movies where they show actors prepping for their scene and they're speaking very clearly, like Will Ferrell in Anchorman. Prognosticus. Woo!
Yeah.
And then you got to hoot, or you got to like you do like the old Italian.
The old Italian guy.
Yes.
You know what? I promise.
I got a favor.
Our next episode that we do this, I'll have some kind of audio, Dan, that we're going to be able to drop in. For you, it's going to be hoots, screeches,
clicks.
Maybe some taps and clicks, right?
Yes. Yep.
For me, it's going to be the old Italian guy.
Oh yeah, I need a favor.
And he's going to be clearing his throat too.
Yeah,
of course.
Perfect.
Yeah, but Prognosticus episode, better known as our previews and predictions for the upcoming week, Dan, and we've got some really good games coming up. But one thing I wanted to just mention, I don't know if you saw this, Dan, but you know how the rankings come out every week for the state of Illinois?
Yep.
And you can find them on, let's see, Max Preps. You can find them on, sometimes they do their top 25.
Yeah, Edgy does some.
Edgy does some. Edgy Tim, right.
Shaw Local.
Shaw
Local.
They'll
do good jobs,
Yeah, everybody does a really good job on them. The one thing, Max Preps, they don't use the eye test on theirs. What they use is analytics, right? They look at scores, they look at strength of schedule, they look at all those other types of things, because they don't have somebody there watching the games. So I looked at their recent rankings, and they had the top 30 in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
There are 10 teams from the CCL in the top 30, in Max Prep's top 30 for the state of Illinois. You've got Mount Carmel, number 2. You've got St. Francis, number 4. Now that, I don't know if that's a surprise. That's a huge jump.
Yeah.
You've got Loyola, number 5. You've got Nazareth, number 9. You've got Marist, number 10. St. Rita, 11. St. Ignatius, 18. Joliet Catholic, 23. Fenwick, 29. And Brother Rice, 30.
Wow, that is, yeah.
What do you think of that? Wow.
You know, it's funny. There's 5. I think there's 5 total undefeateds in the entire Catholic League.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, St. Francis, do they have a loss? They don't have a loss.
No,
right?
They don't have a loss. They're 3-0.
But you've also got St. Lawrence. It's undefeated. St. Viator, Benet is undefeated. So there's even more. There's undefeateds in the Catholic League that aren't in that top 30. So that's interesting from an analytical standpoint that that they've come up with that, and it tells you a little bit about Loyola's early schedule too.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah,
because if you look at the Sun-Times Super 25, like we'll take one example. Naz in the Max Preps is 9. Naz in the Sun-Times Super 25, I think, is 4. 3 or 4. I think 4. But they're taking into account the eye test.
Right.
That guy has gone out and watched them play, and he's like, hey, this is a really good football team.
Yeah.
Right. So I just found that really interesting.
It is. And you can do some of your own combinations with that and, come up with if you're someone that follows analytics and likes that type of thing, to take that information that you found on Max Preps and combine it with what we've seen.
Right.
So we've got ideas about who we think are the top teams, and probably could come up with a power rankings for the Catholic League.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, Dan. Maybe you want to do that for a future episode? You want to? You feel like it? You're feeling it? Yeah.
I could do that. I could absolutely do that. Yeah.
You want to piss off more listeners?
Yes. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Right. I'm glad that you field all the messages on social media and email.
I love hearing from our listeners, Dan.
Yeah.
There's nothing more than that I would rather do is to read whatever comments, emails, and I'm never in disagreement with any of our listeners and their comments or emails. I'm like, yeah.
Your brother sucks.
I get it. Yes, Dan, he is. He's a heavyweight to carry, but,
Right.
I'm carrying him.
Samsonite, we call him.
Samsonite. All right, that's good. I like it. But we're here for something else, Dan, right? And what everybody waits for, and that's our previews and predictions for the upcoming games. And we let Prognosticus weigh in as well for both of us. So this week, first week of, what do you want to say, interdivision games, right?
In division.
In division.
Yeah.
Very
Last
good. Nice
week
choice.
was interdivision. Yeah.
Okay. In division. I like
it. In division. Yeah.
Yeah. And the first game, Dan, let's we've gone we kind of started at the blue and always gone down.
It's alphabetical for us. That's how we've done it. So let's just do it backward.
Let's do it backwards today. So let's start with Fenwick and Montini. So they play Friday at 30. Join us on the Friday Night Blitz. We'll be covering this game. It's at Fenwick. So Fenwick lost a tough one last week, 14-13 to Catholic. They're now 2-1. One of the things that was a bit concerning to me, Dan, regarding Fenwick is they only put up 13 points. I know how good Joliet Catholic's defense is, and there's a ton of great defenses in the CCL. They put up 34 against Ignatius. So only scoring 13 last week, maybe a bit of a letdown, who knows. But anyways, it seems like they've settled on their quarterback, Jamin Williams.
Yeah.
He's had 2 really good games in a row now, passing the ball. Let's see, on the other side, Montini lost 21-6 to Marist. They moved to 2-1 as well. Montini, maybe are they having a little trouble scoring against some of the better teams here or better defenses? They're facing another tough one.
It seems like
week.
And are they settled at quarterback? Right.
I don't know. They're still using 2 quarterbacks.
Right.
They had Gaetano Carbonara and Israel Abrams. It seems like Carbonara maybe got a few more of the snaps in the game against Fenwick, but they've got to find some kind of mix here that gets them into the end zone, don't you think?
Yeah, we've talked about some of their receivers that they've got weapons that they can go to, and they've got to get those guys the football. So I think that will be the plan for Montini, and we aren't privy to it. So the plan for Montini is to just go with 2 quarterbacks, whether it's quarter by quarter or half by half, or if they're trying to make a decision and settle on one. That'll be something that I'm watching in this week's game, and to see how they do that, and to see whoever's at quarterback if they get the ball to their playmakers.
Right. I mean, Carbonara, right? He's the more experienced quarterback for sure. Takes care of the ball, puts the ball in the right place, gets it to the right spot. The only problem is you've got to start scoring more points, in my opinion.
Yeah, unfortunately, from football, from Pee Wee to the NFL, the quarterback probably gets too much of credit and or blame, right?
All the way up, yeah.
Yeah,
from
bottom to top, and so it's no different in high school. Football's a great sport because it's a total team effort, right? There could be breakdowns on the outside. Montini likes to get on the edges quickly, with swing passes and bubble screens, that type of thing. So, there could be blocking that's breaking down in the perimeter. You don't know what some of the root causes are. Might not necessarily be the quarterback, but sometimes that change sometimes just makes a change for, change sake that ends up being, a positive. So,
yeah.
So all that said, Joe, what are you thinking about? I mean, Fenwick, it's funny. Jim Williams, he throws it up, and you've got guys like Nate Marshall that just go up and get it.
They go and get it,
yeah.
And he's had 2 really good games, Dan. And Fenwick on the defensive side, we know who they got. I mean, Nate Marshall again, right? So if we're gonna have to predict this game. It's at Fenwick. I am going to go with Fenwick on this game, Dan, or in this game.
Okay.
What about you?
All right,
what
Joe.
What are you thinking?
I'm going opposite. I'm taking Montini.
All right. Well, there's our first disagreement, which is fine. Yeah, no problems. I was just looking at, by the way, last week, Dan, you went 5-7 in your predictions.
Ouch.
And I went 6-6. So really,
no, neither one of us lighting the world on fire.
No, neither one. All right, so we'll mark that down.
Got it.
I've got Fenwick. You've got Montini.
Yep.
All right, let's move to the next game, and that's Carmel and St. Laurence. Should be a really good game, Dan.
Hellacious drive for St. Laurence.
That's really bad. It's 7:30 game time at Carmel.
They've got to leave Thursday night.
Right, they do.
After practice, St. Lawrence got to board the bus and go. And if they go right away and don't stop, they might get there by game time.
Yeah,
Friday night.
That's really tough. Carmel. Let's see. So last week, they're coming off of a last minutes win, I'll say, over Providence. So Carmel's now 2-1. Their quarterback, sophomore Trey Taylor, he had another impressive performance, Dan. I think he threw for over 200 yards passing with a touchdown. Carmel's defense came up big when they needed it. Got 2 picks in the game to stop some Providence drives. On the other hand, St. Laurence 3-0 after a 24-0 win over Notre Dame, a shutout. We've talked about some really good defenses in the Chicago Catholic League, and St. Lawrence is one of them. Yeah. I think they've only given up 15 points in 3 games, Dan, and they've averaged over 35 points per game in their 3 wins, so they're 3-0. What are you thinking? How are you feeling about this game?
You know, St. Lawrence has a really potent running game. Quarterback Witkowski can run. We've talked about Harley Riz. They're getting some highlight level they're getting highlight level games, as for these big victories. They've kind of dominated, and we know Notre Dame plays some pretty stingy defense. So to go up and win 24-0, that says something too. So, I'm going to stick with Lawrence on this one, St. Lawrence. I'm picking them. I feel like they're just really consistent. And I feel like, just like I felt last year, I feel like their coordinators on the offensive side of the ball, both sides of the ball, really, I think they play as good a complementary football as we see in the Catholic League.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like. Carmel's been a little more up and down. You're not quite sure what to expect. I mean, Trey Taylor's been great. That pass he threw to beat Providence at the end of the game was unbelievable. Pass and catch both.
Supremely talented kid.
Yeah. But because of the consistency from St. Lawrence, that's where I'm going to go this week, Joe.
I'm with you, Dan, on this one. I'm going with St. Lawrence too. For exactly the same reasons. I know Carmel is extremely talented, and I think you're relying on a extremely talented quarterback in Trey Taylor. He's also, and we mentioned this a couple times, he's young, right? So he's going to have his ups and downs, big moments and low moments. But I think St. Lawrence, because they're steady and they're really talented on both offense and defense, I think they come out with the win on this one.
Yeah, they're incredibly secure with what they do.
Yeah.
It's like you can mark it down as far as what they're going to do both offensively and defensively. So
all right. I'm marking it down, Dan. Yep. St. Lawrence.
All right.
Both of us. All right. So that takes care of the in-division white games. Let's go to the red division, Dan. And the first game we've got here is an interesting one. It's Marian Catholic and Leo. This is at Marian Catholic. Leo lost 17-6 last week to St. Patrick, and they're now 0-3. They've had a tough start to the season. Marian lost to DePaul Prep 20-7. They're now 1-2. As we've reported in previous episodes, Leo's struggling, trying to find their offense, build their offense around their quarterback, Derek Davis. But Marian is struggling too to score points as well. They've only scored 32 points in their 3 games, Dan, and 25 of those were in one games. That kind of tells you where their offense is at right now. I know last week it seemed like they started to get their running back Kyle Scott going a little bit. Had some nice plays. The games at Marian, as I mentioned. This one is kind of difficult to predict, in my opinion.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. Marion's got to find a way to move the football consistently, right? But their defense may be too much for Leo. Their defense is pretty good.
Yeah.
And Leo has gotten incrementally better, but they have to find a way to cut down on unforced errors. So a couple teams, Joe, in this division, they're making too many unforced errors, and that's going to kill you in any football game, let alone the Catholic League. So regardless of division, a lot of times teams that make the fewest mistakes come out on top. So Leo has just kind of shot themselves in the foot on a couple occasions. So that's So my pick, because of that, Joe, again, going with the consistency, and I think Marian just has something that's more consistent that they can lean on with their defense.
I think so too. Marian Catholic's defense has been very stout, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. It will be interesting to see where some of the points come from on both sides of the ball. But from my perspective, Dan, this is at Marian Catholic. I'm gonna pick Marian Catholic in this game.
All right. So
did you pick Marian?
I picked Marian as well.
All right. So let's go to the next game in the red division, and it's De La Salle and Marmion. De La Salle, they put up 64 points against Foreman, right?
Right.
And then they were shut out against Benet. Now, that may say something about the competition that they're playing, but out against Benet 42-0. They didn't put any points up on the board. So they're now 1-2. Marmion lost to St. Viator 34-7. Marmion started off 2-0. It was a close game at the half, but the defense had a tough time against Viator offense, which can be high-powered and high-flying at times.
Yeah, pretty explosive.
Cooper Komet and some others, Davion Ellis, right? One of the interesting things I saw in this game, Dan, is Marmion had more total offense than St. Viator last week, but they just could not score.
Right, they're one of the teams that you see they go 20-20 really well, right?
Yeah,
and they can go 20-20 with the best of them, but when the field shrinks, they're having a harder time, in the red zone, punching the ball in. That's I see that as a progression. Teams kind of learn what they have to do to get the ball in the end zone.
Right.
When they find it easy to go 20-20 and then they're stalling, that's kind of a learning thing that I think teams have to go through offensively, especially if you don't have really. Now they got a couple big plays against St. Viator, but if you don't have that guy that consistently can take it to the house from any spot on the field, and you're a grinded out team, which I think Marmion would admit that they are. You've really got to get very good in the red zone, and that's the difference. And for De La Salle, Joe, it's just like Leo, just too many unforced errors. I had a chance to watch that game a little bit, and De La Salle's got a bunch of guys going both ways. And they're just struggling with some of the basics, which is kind of a bummer, and you wonder if that's numbers related, even from the snap, and punt, and to develop a long snapper, and so some of those things are things that take time within a program. You start working with kids when they're freshmen, so that by the time they're on varsity, you've got a legitimate long snapper and a guy who's played center for a few years and a couple guys that can snap. So that's all part of program building, and that's where Coach Blackman is at, right now. So I think Marmion, I've called them feisty a bunch of times. They look like that. I love their running game. Their running backs are really good. They run angry. They're getting improved play from Cameron Tolliver at quarterback. So I think Marmion takes this one this week, at De La Salle, because again, it's becoming a theme of my picks here. They're just more consistent with doing with the basics, the fundamentals. They have consistency there that De La Salle doesn't quite have yet.
Yeah, and they've shown the penchant for having the occasional play, right? Some play down the field, which we haven't seen from De La Salle yet. I agree, De La Salle is struggling, and I attribute it partly to the numbers thing. I'm not sure. They've got maybe 22 to 25 players on the varsity that are juniors or seniors, so that's always a problem with any program, but. Again, Coach Blackman is building that program, and sometimes you got to start from the bottom and work your way up, and it seems like that's where they're at. But I'm going with Marmion on this one as well, Dan.
Yeah, and real quick, Joe, De La Salle's getting some great efforts going both. Caleb Navarro going both ways, quarterback and I think linebacker, maybe outside linebacker, maybe a safety, but that type playing angry on defense, you can tell he's frustrated by what's happening offensively, and he's bringing it to the defensive side of the ball. I think they've got a few players that are doing that, so
for sure
they can hit you a little bit, but yeah, I think Marmion's the pick there.
Yep. Okay. All right. So that's the red division, Dan. Let's move to the purple, and the first game here is a battle of 3-0 teams. More 3-0 teams. You've got Benet Academy and St. Viator. This game is it's a home game for Benet. So, Benet dominated last week against De La Salle. I mentioned that earlier, 42-0. Ryan Kabaki, who's Bennett's quarterback, he's had a really strong start to the season. But who's had an even stronger start, Dan, is Marty Rogowski. He's doing it all, right?
Yeah.
Offense, defense, special teams, you name it. So Viator's got to be prepared for him for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny, 3 out of the 4 teams playing in this division, Joe, are undefeated. So that's interesting that the purple has started out like that. And we kind of compared notes on this game a little bit before. So we both said 2 high-powered offenses, both undefeated, 2 do-it-all quarterbacks in Komet and Kabaki, right? Yep. 2 big-time wide receivers, Davion Ellis and Bennett's had Luke Doyle, and you talked about Marty Rogowski, who might be the X factor in this game because he is becoming a must-see player. He's got the ability to score during any possession. Offense, right. Defense, or special teams. So it's going to come down to who can keep the big plays down in this one.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I think this game comes down to, something's going to have to give right. in this game. And it may come down to whose defense can get the stop when it's needed, needed the most during this game, because they might be exchanging scores, throughout the whole game. And then somebody's going to have to make a stop at some point. So, who is that? Is that Benet or is it St. Viator? For me, I think Viator's offense might be a little more high powered than Benet's at this point. Even though Benet is averaging a lot of points per game, St. Viator's I think up there 42 points a game. But the one thing I did see, and I'm not sure about Viator's competition, although they played Marmion last week, but they've only given up 13 points in 3 games, Dan. So I think the defense is there. I think Bennett's going to test that defense, but I do think that Viator comes out in the end and gets a win here.
Yeah, Joe, I do too. We're going to have to turn in our diplomas. There's going to be a knock on our door. But
I just rescinded my alumni,
status
membership.
Yes,
status.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is homecoming at Benet this weekend, and we won't be letting the front gates. But because I'm going to pick St. Viator as well, and I think the difference is, Joe, that Bennett's strength defensively is up front. And I think that where St. Viator excels is on the perimeter and throwing the ball deep. And with Komet scrambling, and I think the difference is going to be Komet can get on the outside, and they're going to negate that defensive front at Benet. I don't think that St. Viator, they've run the ball very well too. I think they probably don't run the ball quite as well against Benet this week, but I do think that they have the edge when it comes to their style of offense versus Bennett's, maybe back 7. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think it should, all signs point to it being kind of high scoring. I think it'll be really close. Won't be surprised if Benet wins, but my pick, I picked St. Viator to win this division early in the year when we did our division predictions.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I'm gonna stay consistent and go with St. Viator.
All right.
And wait for the phone to ring.
It's going to ring very soon. Yeah. As soon as this goes out, Dan, I'm sure you're going to give it 3, 4, 5, 8, 100 phone calls.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad it's you and not me. Although it may be me.
You're going to get some. I'm going
to get some. All right. So, the purple division, we did Benet, St. Viator. Let's go to the DePaul Prep St. Patrick game, Dan. This is at DePaul Prep. It's 7 o'clock on Friday. Interesting game here. DePaul, they won last week 20-7 over Marian Catholic, and they've got a 3-0 start now their season. A team that you and I have talked about multiple times, that we think is kind of on the rise here. And, they've proven that out, at least early in the season, Dan, with a 3-0 start.
Yeah, they seem to be fulfilling expectations to this point. And they're led by the cast of characters that we kind of thought in the beginning, with Juju Rodriguez and Jaden Peavy, being really dangerous with the football on offense. It'll be interesting to see how their offense performs against a kind of a stingy St. Pat's defense.
Very stingy.
Yeah,
very stingy for sure.
I've got a soft spot in my heart for defensive linemen, Joe, and St. Pat's has a good one. And David Volarencio, watch a little film, and
can you spell that?
I had it written. I have it written down, but I don't. I'm not confident that I transcribed it properly. But
if you can say it, that's all that matters. Dan, yeah, especially with what we're doing, right?
Right. So they've, and I think St. Pat's has been really opportunistic. So when they've had it, when they've had the ball bounce their way, they've taken advantage of it, which you can't say for all these teams. So I think the difference is going to be in this game is does St. Pat's have enough offense to keep up with DePaul? And I think there's a little bit of a balance tipping there that DePaul has the edge. From when you look at the whole team, offense and defense, they're also another team that's playing very good complementary football. So I'm picking DePaul this week. It won't surprise me if this game is maybe closer than other people who pick games might think.
Yeah. Is that in pencil or pen, Dan?
Oh, I'm good, Joe. Put it in pen. Yeah.
All right. Put it in pen.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. I mean, St. Patrick comes into this game with, 2-1. They had a 17-6 win over Leo last week, which makes me a little bit suspect about their offense, Dan, only scoring 17 points against Leo. But their defense is top-notch. We know that. They've only given up 19 points in their first 3 games so far. But they probably have not seen an offense quite like DePaul's yet with Juju Rodriguez and Braden Peavy. So I think from a standpoint of, who's got most of the offensive firepower here, and I think that's going to be the difference in this game. I'm going to go with DePaul as well, Dan.
Yeah, I think when you look at St. Pat's record, they haven't really been tested offense like DePaul's, right? Notre Dame is a lot like St. Pat's, really good defensively. They haven't been great offensively, and then they played Larkin, who struggles. So I think this is going to be the biggest test for that defense, and it's the reason I'm picking DePaul.
Okay, all right, very good. So we've moving beyond the purple division, and we're going to the orange, one of my favorite colors in the fall, Dan, just so you know. And the first game we've got here is Providence and Notre Dame, who we were just talking about. Providence lost last week to Carmel 27-24 in the last 2 minutes, whatever that was. And they're now 1-2. Probably a bit of a surprise for Providence starting out 1-2. Considering what everybody and us included thought that they were going to do this year. They've still got time, obviously, but I think that on the offensive side of the ball, Providence has got to get the ball in the hands of one of their dynamic players, Xavier Coleman, who's their wide receiver. He had a really good game last week. I personally think they didn't use him enough. Now they've got a really good running back too in Broden Mackett. He had a nice game, 85 yards, rushing with a TD. But they're going to go up against a really good defense here in Notre Dame. They've only given up 37 points in their 3 games, so averaging a little bit over 10 points per game, and 24 of those were last week. So, I think this is going to be one of the more difficult games to predict for me, Dan. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think that one of the things that I like about Notre Dame and watching some of their video is they've played great on special teams. They're really good. So, it's a big deal, right? We fall into the same trap as everyone else that does this type of thing. And when you talk about offense and defense, and special teams gets kind of short shrifted, but Notre Dame has played very good on special teams this year. And it could come down to something like that. I think,
right.
Notre Dame has to find a way to get the ball to Luke Olson, their stud wide receiver. Big kid, good football player, blocked a punt last week and recovered it in the end zone, I should say. So they've got to find a way to get him the ball. But defense and special teams have been their calling card so far this year. So, Providence has 2 losses, Joe, by a total of 4 points.
Right.
Against really good teams, beat a really good team in Lincoln Way Central. So I think one of the things is that they're hosting this game, and I think that's going to make a difference this week.
Right.
Okay. So my pick is for Providence.
Yep, I felt that coming, Dan. I thought you were going to pick Providence, and I think Notre Dame is really got to figure out a way to score some points, Dan. You mentioned that they've got to figure out a way to get the ball into the hands of some of their playmakers. They haven't done that yet. Maybe they're going to figure that out this week. But I still think that Providence is probably too much for Notre Dame this week, and I'm going to go with Providence as well.
Yeah, and Providence is one of the teams, at 1-2. That alarm bells are going off. That's kind of what I think about whether they're talking. They're probably, I'm sure they're looking at 1 week at a time, right? But we don't have to do that. So when I look at their schedule and see that after they've got St. Francis, Marist, Loyola, Marian Catholic, Joliet Catholic after this, they have got to figure it out. They could, this is a team that we said and would not be surprised if they had state championship aspirations. So, and they're probably close to being there, but they could get Catholic Leagued out of the playoffs if they're not careful. So it's a huge game for both teams, but I really think Providence is probably treating this like a playoff game because that's essentially what it is for them.
Yeah, it's I think when it comes down to it, Dan, and you just kind of alluded to some of the different facts here, is that this might be a must-win for Providence, considering their strength of schedule going forward. It's the first game that I've looked at where I thought, they've really got to win this game or else, things might be really difficult for them going forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think so
maybe
too.
A must win.
Yeah.
Maybe a must win.
Yeah. A good one to keep an eye on this weekend.
And we will, Dan, during what? Friday Night Blitz?
Friday Night Blitz.
We'll be watching, and we'll let everybody know. So come back and listen during Friday Night Blitz, and we'll let you know what's going on in that game. But let's move to the next one, and it's Joliet Catholic and Marist. Dan, let's see. So last week, Joliet Catholic just squeaked by with a 14-13 win over Fenwick last week. So Joliet Catholic, they go 2-1 on the season. They had 370 yards of total offense in that game, Dan. Fairly well balanced. Obviously more run than pass, which is not unusual with Catholic. But they had a hard time putting the ball in the end zone, right? And that's that's going to be a problem again this week because they're facing a really, really good Marist defense.
Yeah, I think maybe my pick for the top defense in the Catholic League so far that I've seen, Marist. So now I haven't seen them all, right? And Joliet Catholic's a really good one that I haven't really gotten a chance to watch a lot of. I know both D lines anchored by big 99s. You'll have to watch that from Brad Fitzgibbon on Marist and Ian Campbell on Joliet Catholic. So two big 99s to watch this weekend. There's going to be, again, some really good defense played. And I feel like Marist has done just enough, been, opportunistic enough. And they've gotten great play from the quarterback, Rita, the transfer from Lincoln Way East. He's one of these guys that's a dual threat, and he's made a difference with his feet. And again, those things that you can't really scheme against that can be a difference maker in these games. It's a big deal. So it might be a big deal for this week. I think that might come into play again.
Right. Yeah. And, Marist beat Montini last week, 21-6. So their defense showed up, obviously, and Ritter, as you mentioned, showed up as well. I watched some of the footage of that game or some of the video of that game, Dan, and Ritter is in complete control the whole time he is on the field. I love the way he plays the quarterback position. Now, he's got some good weapons too. He's got good running backs in McAuliffe and Bartolotto, as well as the wide receiver. Maybe his favorite wide receiver is Brendan Doran, who he utilizes a lot throughout the games. But I really like the way Ritter plays and the control he has on the field, as well as he doesn't look like he's frantic. He looks like he's calm and in control, and I love that in my quarterback.
Yeah, I feel like they always have quarterbacks like that since we've been coaching against them forever. I feel like their quarterback is always a heady guy, makes the right play, makes good decision, runs well. So they definitely have a type there that they like to put at that position. So Joliet Catholic's going to have to try and keep the football. And they've got running backs that just don't like to get tackled very much in Nate McGreeny and Larry Stringham. They are both guys that can grind it out. They play tailback with a running back with a low center of gravity, so it takes the whole team to bring them down. So if they can have success grinding the ball out and keep the ball out of Marist's hands, Marist, I guess it might come down to a big play here and there. I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. This week in Joliet.
Who are you picking, Dan? Come on, I want to hear it.
I'm taking Joliet Catholic on this one. All right,
well, I'm going to take Marist in this game, Dan. And you just mentioned one of the things that kind of put me over the top for Marist when you said you think it might come down to a big play. And I think the team more capable of making that big play when it counts might be Marist. So I'm going to go with Marist on this one. So we differ in our picks on this one, Dan. It's been 5 picks since we've differed. So here we go.
All right. It's good to have a few of those.
It is good to have a few of those.
And I do think that this would be considered an upset. So, but I think Marist has just been in these really tough games week after week. And Joliet Catholic, played in a tough game last week, won the game kind of late defensively, but I just think that it's a chance for Joliet Catholic to make a statement.
Okay. All right. Well, another great game that we'll be watching on Friday.
Yeah, one of the games of the week, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So that's the orange division, Dan. Let's go to the green, and it's St. Francis and St. Rita. This is at St. Francis. So do you think St. Francis made a statement last week in their 35-21 win over Loyola?
Yeah, they need to be a big blinking dot on everyone's radar.
Yeah,
coming out of Wheaton because they're really good, and we know that St. Rita is going to play solid defense. Reigning dog of the week, Justin Buckner, patrols the middle of that defense, and they are a mean and aggressive bunch. But St. Francis has shown that they aren't rattled. I said in our recap, our correspondent said they were in complete control the entire game against Loyola. And they had a really good run. They've got some players, defensively. We talked a lot about their offense, but defensively, Ryan Mullen had a great game against Loyola, and I really like the way he plays defensive back. Ryan Palmieri plays a great linebacker for St. Francis, so they tend to get more pub for their offense. Brady Palmer and Gavin Mueller, some of the guys offensively. The running back, the name is it Tyvon?
Tyvon Ransom.
Tyvon Ransom, yeah. So those are a lot of the guys that we've heard about offensively, but their defense is pretty talented as well, Joe.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned that, Dan, and one of the things I saw when I watched, and I kind of put on my coaching hat for this, the team speed that St. Francis has on defense, I think, is next level. I mean, they just fly around and they make hits and they make plays, and it's everybody. It's their defensive linemen. They're running to the ball all the time. Their linebackers are going sideline to sideline. Their defensive backs are coming up and cutting off the edges and making tackles. So I was really impressed with St. Francis's defense. Obviously their offense, did really well as well, with Brady Palmer quarterback. He had an outstanding game. I think he had 2 passing touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, another one of these dual threats in the Catholic League. Quarterback.
Yeah. And meanwhile, St. Rita, they were able to grind out a really good win, right, for Brother Rice. But it was only 14-7. It was for sure a defensive battle. So, they probably have. It's hard to say this, but it's facing a team like St. Francis that has that kind of team speed on both sides of the ball and really has some momentum going now too. This is a tough one to call, Dan. So do you want me to predict my winner first?
Yes.
All right. Because of all that I just said, and it is at St. Francis, I am going with St. Francis in this game.
On the blue turf. Joe, your
Yeah.
coaching point is really good because running to the football is something that you can coach, and you can tell when teams have worked on it. You can drill that and practice that and make a point that effort is coachable. So that's a really good observation. And if that's the case, Joe, then this is going to be must watch because St. Rita plays the same exact way defensively, flying around. Everyone gets to the football, gets there with bad intentions. So this ought to be a really fun one to watch. But Joe, I'm also going to pick St. Francis. I think.
All right.
Yeah,
I thought for sure you were going to go with Rita for some reason, Dan.
It's that complementary thing, and if both teams are equal defensively, I think St. Francis has the edge offensively. So I think because of that, really close game, could be a low scoring game, but I think St. Francis pulls this out in the fourth quarter.
All right. Okay, so we're in agreement on that game, and another really good game here coming up in the Green Division, and that is Nazareth versus IC. This is at Nazareth. Nazareth is now 2-1 after they lost to Mount Carmel, 56-33 last week. Although even in their loss, Dan, they showed some real firepower on offense for sure. The combination of Logan Malachek to their wide receiver, Jake Sestone, I think they accounted for 3 passing TDs. That is really tough to defend against, considering how Malachek throws the ball and how Sestone, his speed and ability to get open. That's going to be really tough to combat for IC. The one thing, though, Dan, is, and there's no shame in this, I guess, but Nazareth gave up over 550 total yards of offense to Mount Carmel last week. That's a lot of yards to give up on defense, and it's kind of tough to recover from that. But it was Mount Carmel.
And you said there's no shame in it. I'm sure the defensive coordinator doesn't feel that way, right?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. Both teams coming off multiple score losses last week, so that's interesting to say. And I was kind of pounding the table that IC would benefit from the forfeit week, but maybe they lost a little bit of their mojo. And I guess maybe we could try and give some of that back to them. They've also right. we haven't mentioned their quarterback, Will Brick. I think is who's getting the time there.
Yeah,
he's another
really good
dual
really
threat
good
guy where that's a challenge. And Logan Malachek can run. He doesn't necessarily love to. He kind of runs when necessary. He's so effective throwing the ball. Hasn't really needed to. They get good protection. They get him out on the edge as part of their passing game. So, and I mean, IC's got a really good running back who's big, fast, talented. I think he's a sophomore, KJ Reese. So,
did we see him last year as a freshman, Dan?
We may have.
May have, yeah.
Yeah, may have.
He is a load, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah, so they're big, fast, and talented. So I think when we talked about IC, their more marquee talent was on the defensive side of the ball, but they have some offensive guys that can really play.
Yeah, they do.
And for IC, they're 2-1, but their schedule is daunting, and I think this becomes a critical game for them, Joe. So, unfortunately, I see Nazareth is just highly explosive, scoring from any spot on the field, on any down and distance. So my pick for this is Naz.
Yeah, and I think IC is 1-1. They didn't play.
Oh yeah, that's right. 1-1.
1-1.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right. Yep.
But you're right, Dan, about IC's quarterback Will Brick and their running back KG Reese. These are two guys who look, they just look different on the field when you watch them on film. I don't know if it's due to their size and speed or the combination of both, but they are both, dynamic players and real threats on the offensive side of the ball. Even though Nazareth gave up 55 points or whatever it was last week to Mount Carmel, if you're going to give up or if you're going to get into a score-for-score game here or a, something where, you're going to be trading touchdowns, I would not want to do that with Nazareth. So, I'm going to, and I think that might be what this game ends up being. And I do like Nazareth's defense as well, but I'm going to go with Nazareth as well on this, Dan. It's at their home field too, so take that for what it's worth. But I think Nazareth comes out on top of IC this week.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. It doesn't mean we'll be right. You feel like it's like some of these picks, of course. I mean, and this isn't really one of them that, of course, they're going to win. But our record shows that there's a reason they play the football games.
Yeah, you mean our predictions, our record of predictions?
Yes.
All right. So let's go to the last division. That's a blue division, Dan. And first game here is Loyola against Brother Rice. This game is at Loyola. Their second game under the lights, the first time, and it didn't go very well for Loyola last week against St. Francis. They lost 35-21. That was in their first ever Friday night game. We thought that might have a difference, Dan, or make a difference, but didn't seem to. St. Francis seemed to be in control that whole game. Some of their stars, Loyola stars, McPherson had over 100 yards rushing and two TDs. Fitzgerald did not play. Again, Don Maloney filled in for Fitzgerald, and Don Maloney is a sophomore, and he's probably got thrust into a very difficult situation, but he still threw for over 225 yards in this game, Dan, and a touchdown. There's some drop-off for sure from Fitzgerald to Maloney, but probably not as much as you might think.
Yeah, he's been very good to be thrown into that position. I'm sure he didn't expect it, but it certainly looks like he's prepared for it. So the coaching staff has done a great job getting him ready to play. I'm thinking Fitz returns this week. He looked like
supposedly
he could have gone in. Yeah, but and he'll probably be. He's obviously a difference maker in the football game. So I think while Brother Rice, I think just has played their hearts out and has been very good. I think this could be another close loss for him, Joe.
Yeah,
and they would be one where the alarm bells are going off too, because they're currently 1-2. So they're looking at it. We talked about a must win for Providence. I'm thinking both these teams are kind of feeling that it's must win. I'm going to give the edge to Loyola here at home with the return of Ryan Fitzgerald. And so my pick is going to be for Loyola.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Loyola as well, Dan, and I've been wrong in that prediction a couple of times now. But for Brother Rice to have a chance in this game, they really got to get Tyler Lofton, really into this game, and I would think he's got to get like 30 carries, Dan, and
30 touches for sure.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to get him the football.
Yeah, but even that said, and I would never have thought at the beginning of the season that Brother Rice might start out 1-3. I do think that's going to be the case this week, and I'm going to go with Loyola as well.
All right. And that brings us to our last game of the week, Joe.
Our last game of the week, and this is Mount Carmel and St. Ignatius. So Mount Carmel beat Nazareth last week in an awesome game. We watched it on Friday Night Blitz. So come back this week and join us on Friday Night Blitz, and we'll give you the updates on all the games. But 56-33, Mount Carmel beat Nazareth. St. Ignatius, they had a 31-14 win over IC. Ignatius is going to have to try and figure out a way, Dan, to contend with the high-flying Mount Carmel offense led by quarterback Jack Elliott, wide receiver Cooper Lehman, who set a school record with over 250 yards receiving last week. They've also got Quentin Burrell. They've got Daniel Taylor. They've just got Mount Carmel has so many weapons on offense. It's really, really going to make it tough for St. Ignatius, who has a good defense, but they definitely haven't seen a team like this yet.
No, I mean, and you mentioned all those guys. Jack Elliott, one of the reasons he's so good is that, and their offensive staff does such a good job, is they get all those guys touches, and because they're all so dangerous with the ball in their hands. And then you've got Elliott's running ability on top of all this, from whether it's a design run or a scramble. Just makes them the most explosive team in the Catholic League, in my opinion, offensively.
Right.
And I think I've said this before for St. Ignatius. It's always a struggle. They've got, Joe, in order for them to win this game, they've got to not win the time of possession. They've got to dominate the time of possession. And we've talked about maybe Mount Carmel has a weakness, maybe in the defensive backfield against the pass. Naz did a good job and Hun did a good job, but so maybe there's a weakness there, but that's not St. Ignatius' strength.
No, it's not.
So they've got to find a way to just dominate, and Mount Carmel's got good defensive linemen. They're kind of loaded up front. So I just think Mount Carmel is too explosive for St. Ignatius I think they'll stay in the game. I think it'll be lower scoring than maybe what we've seen from Mount Carmel, because I do think St. Ignatius will have some success. And I mentioned in the recap, they do such a good job of blocking on the perimeter. So if they can take advantage of maybe some of those matchups on the outside against Mount Carmel in their running game, as far as getting guys out on the edge, whether it's receivers, running backs, pulling linemen, that's where they're going to have to try and get their big plays. But if they can dominate, they can stay in this game. I don't think they'll be able to do that. So I'm picking Mount Carmel.
Okay, yeah, and I think you mentioned a key point there, Dan, for Ignatius, and it would be to control the ball. Now, obviously, they run the kind of offense that, might be able to do that, with, their quarterback, Jack Wanzung, is, really solid and, runs their offense really well. He's very talented. He's very fast. He's got two good running backs in Liam Hines and Robbie Connor, so I would think that that's exactly what they're going to try and do. But, we've seen Mount Carmel. We've seen their defense. Yeah, they've given up, some points to some teams. But I still think, and you mentioned this before, that Mount Carmel might be the class of the Chicago Catholic League at this point. And I'm kind of in agreement with you on that, Dan. And I think Mount Carmel comes out with the win against Ignatius this week as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're in agreement on that one.
All right. We've got, I think we agreed on just about all of them except looks like 3, Dan. So we'll be monitoring that come Friday night. So everybody, make sure you join us on Friday Night Blitz. We'll be sure to get the link out there for you to be able to join, or you can watch it. We'll be live streaming to Twitter and to YouTube and to Facebook. So if you want to watch there as well, you can do that. And if you'd like to check in with us too, right? We have some correspondents, right, who are checking in with us from various games throughout the night. If you're somebody who would like to do that, make sure reach out to us and let us know. Reach out to us here, leave us a comment, send us an email at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. Contact us on social media. How many different ways, Dan, do we have people to get in touch with us?
It feels like 500.
And growing.
When you go through the ways, it's like, man, come on, just reach out.
Oh my God, come on, reach out. We do have some really good correspondents, though. Who
and getting better each week. There's more. Yep. We're getting more activity from people at the game. So that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Cause I like to hear from people, I'd like to hear your voice, your sweet baritones, Dan, but every now and then I got to hear something different.
I'm right there with you.
No knock on you. Right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. And, like I said, make sure you join us on Friday night, starting at 9:00 for Friday Night Blitz. We'll be covering all the games. Make sure you like and follow and subscribe on wherever you're listening from.
Subscribe, people.
Subscribe, follow, like. We love all those things. But thank you for listening to this episode, and we will talk to you soon.